Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2305. Today I'm talking with a Polish automotive designer who's introducing a new brand that has done a collaboration with one of the most famous design houses in the world, Pininfarina. So be prepared to be inspired. Oh, and the car's electric too. That's pretty cool.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Warwick in the UK. I seem to be getting across the pond quite a bit these days, but I probably should be in Poland, and you'll understand that in a few moments. But I'm with a very special guest by the name of Mariusz Bekas. Mariusz, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to have some fun. Now, before I give you an introduction and I explain the Polish connection and you being in the UK and a very cool new automobile and a collaboration between some very interesting companies, what's one little thing that maybe people don't know about you?
Well, in addition to my daily responsibility as a car designer, along with my wife, we also curate and creatively direct a Swiss fashion brand called Zoccolillo. So not only do I design cars, but we also do women's fashion as well.
Oh, very cool. Now say, is it Zoccolillo?
Zoccolillo in Switzerland, yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, we are quite a worldly family. This is very cool.
Indeed.
So it's women's fashion. So is it clothing or handbags?
No, it's primarily we focus on sustainable, vegan, alternative to animal leathers accessories. We are working on developing a men's collection as well, but it's really trying to look at fashion from a sustainability perspective, connecting of course connecting different trends, but different suppliers throughout the world as well, and see what we can do.
This is very cool. I love it. Entrepreneurial family, it sounds like to me. So
it's a team effort, absolutely.
Well, let me give you an introduction. We're going to dive into a very cool world. Mariusz Bekas is the design manager for the Polish EV startup brand Izera. Currently, he is responsible for their design operations in exterior, interior, and HMI development. Izera is part of a new global partnership between the parent company, ElectroMobility Poland, Geely Automotive, and world-renowned design house Pininfarina. Mariusz's lifelong passion for drawing led him to a pursuit of studies in industrial and transportation design. Upon graduating from the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California, he returned to Europe to begin his career in automotive design with Jaguar Land Rover. His decades-long experience with JLR involved both exterior and interior development, most currently of which was his role of leadership interior design of the award-winning Jaguar I-Pace and the all-new Jaguar F-Pace, too. Oh, spectacular vehicles. We'll be back in just a moment to learn a lot more about Izera and what we're doing there. But first, a word from our sponsors. So give them a little love. They keep the petrol in the tanks, or in this case, maybe the charge in the batteries, because they're going to be talking about EV. We'll be right back. Years ago, when it was time to renew my collector car insurance policy, my carrier's rates went up. Way up, but my usage was the same and I never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. So what's with that? So I turned to American Collectors Insurance. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? Then it's time to look around and call American Collectors Insurance. I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, I'm glad I did. I saved hundreds of dollars every year and slept better at night knowing my baby was properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provided me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by their history of taking great care of their clients. What could be better than that? So give them a call and ask for a quote today. 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love like I did with American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. For several years now, you've heard me talk about Linkage Magazine. I've been a subscriber since the start. Their talented and creative team brings you a spectacular publication and website that shares the automotive passion from a worldwide perspective. Linkage is about driving, restoring, collecting, and first-hand experience at collector car auctions and more. They bring you real-world values plus rational, experienced opinions on the current markets. They cover the automotive world and the people who share our passions. And Linkage Magazine has grown, mailing you 6 issues annually. Join me on this journey with Linkage. They're geared for the automotive life. You can subscribe at linkagemag.com. So Mariusz, we are back. Let's dive into your world of design. And before we get into Izera, this new brand, an EV brand, I want to talk a little bit about your design career as a whole. Is this something that you always dreamed of doing? Because you ended up at one of the top schools for automotive design. And then we'll take a deeper dive into this new Izera automobile.
Absolutely. I think it's when looking back on it, it's a story of full circles. Fundamentally, growing up in Poland, born in the early 80s, we had the opportunity to emigrate to Canada, where the opportunities are a lot more open to artists and designers and creatives. And through the help of my parents, ended up studying industrial design, where I was really exposed to transportation design. But being a child of the 80s, obviously automobiles and the freedom that they gave us was something that was one of the great milestones of our adolescence. I grew up in the tuner culture, guilty to say that, but it was really a passion to have that car and to have that as an extension of myself and to keep me occupied, keep me out of trouble. But at the same time, I've always had a passion for art, for visual communication, and kind of the two led themselves down a natural path. And upon graduating from industrial design, the world of transportation design really opened myself up, and myself and a couple of colleagues from school at the time, we kind of all went separate ways in terms of our studies. I was fortunate enough to be accepted into Art Center College of Design, where really with the help of my parents, spent fabulous, amazing 4 years there, which really opened up my eyes, not only towards design, but also the art of storytelling, the communication, but more importantly, the automotive culture itself. I don't think there's another place in the world, much like Southern California, to be really absorbed into that culture. And upon graduation, I was fortunate enough to emigrate back to Europe to look for opportunities, and took on a role with Jaguar Land Rover. Initially working on the Land Rover side of the business. And then I was given the opportunity to join the Jaguar team on the interior side. And as you've mentioned, leading the interior development of the first all-electric Jaguar I-Pace, and then moving on to develop the all-new top hat for Jaguar F-Pace, which perhaps it was the interior it always deserved, but fantastic brand, fantastic people. Obviously, being exposed to the leadership of Ian Callum, who's an icon and a legend, is probably once in a lifetime experience. But also on the other side from Range Rover, from Land Rover Range Rover on the Jerry McGovern, which are probably two polar opposites. But to be around them and to be really able to absorb their approach to design and their command of the product and how they approach the customer's needs was a really life lesson that not everyone gets to experience. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, very cool. What a background, and bravo on the job you and your team did on those vehicles, because they're spectacular. Really, really cool. And, I'm sitting here, you saying a child of the 80s. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel old. But it's kind of the same, because I have an 84 E46 M3 that I bought new and still have it today. I just love that car. It's wonderful. But when I grew up, the 70s were kind of my time period. So I'm a few decades behind you, maybe more than that, afraid to say. But we all tend to migrate to what we wish we could have when we were a kid. And now that we're adults and we have the money, we can get those things. But what you're doing with this combination of 3 brands, I really want to dive into this, because one of your colleagues reached out to me and told me what you guys are doing. And what first caught my mind, because I wasn't real familiar with ElectroMobility Poland, nor Geely Automotive, but Pininfarina, okay, heard of them before because of the relationship, right, of course, with Ferrari and Lancia and all these other cars that they did. But I'd like you to start by talking about ElectroMobility Poland and the other brands that I mentioned, and then we're going to get into this new car, because this is an electric vehicle, and my gosh, you're living in a time that I think is unprecedented in the speed of change in the automotive world. It must make your head spin every day. But can you tell us a little bit more first about the parent company, ElectroMobility Poland?
So ElectroMobility Poland was started with the idea that as we venture into this new world of EV vehicles, there's a great opportunity for newcomers to stake out a part of the market that traditionally would be reserved for the traditional legacy OEMs. And you combine that with the idea that Poland, within the European market, is the largest consumer without a home brand, without home OEM manufacturer. There really is an opportunity to bring forward a brand that is made in Poland, developed in Poland, and sold across the greater European continent. There are a lot of OEM brands that have factories, and there's a very talented and skilled workforce in Poland. However, due to the events around communism and then the fall of communism, the Polish automotive industry, much like the rest of the world, also went with it. And I think there's a really good opportunity now to stake our own part of the market, especially in a world where everybody is kind of on level footing.
Well, Poland is interesting to me. My son did a student exchange program and got to go stay in Poland for a while with a family. And really eye-opening for him. And one of the cool things when he was there was his host family said, "What does your dad do?" And he go, "Oh, my dad's really into cars." And at the time, I wasn't doing this podcast. I was part of a company that we were building that evolved around car care and products. And he got to visit Kirkham Motorsports, where they're building the aluminum Cobras.
Yep. Yes.
And old that used to be. I think they were in a shop where they used to build fighter jets and things like that.
That's right, MiGs. Yeah. Phenomenal craftsmanship. Absolutely.
Well, that's why I bring it up is the craftsmanship, and so. This is very cool. EMP is known. ElectroMobility Poland is making strides. But let's talk about the new brand here, because this new car, I haven't seen a whole lot of pictures of it, but it's very intriguing. And before you tell me about the car, I'd love to hear your impressions of what's going on in the automotive industry now with EV, because this is like a freight train barreling down on all of us. And as you said, there's opportunity here for new brands.
Absolutely, there's opportunity. I think if you go back to your conversation with Richard Rollins, I think he nailed it quite correctly, because fundamentally, one of it is the consumer is asking for it, but the other element is the change is being kind of forced upon us. So we have two things that we can do. One, we can sit around and just wait for everybody to beat us to it.
Right.
Or we can do the hard thing and actually try and create something from scratch. Now, where I think a lot of what I meant earlier by saying that we're all on level footing is nobody really knows the exact formula that you can apply to get the perfect result. Obviously, electric cars have been done in the past over 100 years ago, and then the onset of internal combustion engines, with whether it was petrol or diesel. But now, as we're being forced to fall into compliance with battery electric vehicles, really the opportunity is there to stake out something new. Now, the question is, how will our consumer be perceptive to it? Do they want a brand that is screaming and shouting and completely new, or do they want something that's a little bit more familiar? I think the challenge for us with ElectroMobility Poland is that we are not only creating a new vehicle, but we're also establishing a completely new brand. And with those two elements, they really need to have a cohesive and a harmonious message to the customer. So that, from a perspective of a designer, taking my experience on board, but also the challenge, it's a fantastic opportunity. Is it difficult? Absolutely. It's probably the most difficult challenge that I, along with my colleagues, have faced. But that is really the excitement, and the fact that other brands are going through the same motions that we are. There aren't perfect solutions. Some brands are taking different strategies. You can see, especially with some of more the established OEMs, they're trying to create sub-brands of electric battery vehicles, all in an effort to try and kind of find the right solution that the customers will buy into.
I would think that this combination of three companies creates a really high demand for the understanding of multiplicitary, blah, blah, blah. Now tell me how to say that in Polish.
Multidisciplinary.
Yeah, there you go. Design processes. I mean, you're dealing with three major brands here, and they all have to come together, and the teams all have to come together to create something that is new and innovative. How does that work in a brand? I mean, you've got all these different mindsets. I would imagine it's probably pretty exciting because you got all these geniuses coming together in a room to create something new. Is that how it's looked upon, or do you have to really segment the different departments of each company?
I think the perfect word to describe that will be a partnership, where we come in as EMP. We are the curators of the whole entire process. So everything happens under our guidance and our us overseeing the entire process. Now, what we cannot do as a startup is to create a completely new infrastructure with the resources and the expertise and the talent in a country where most of that talent is situated is somewhere else outside its borders, because due to the fact that the industry does not exist. So something has to come first. It's the chicken or the egg. And very much the strategy was taken that we would look for world-renowned, qualified, but high-tech partners that would allow us to achieve a competitive product within the marketplace. And the vehicles that we've shown at the end of 2019, 2020 were very much the idea to capture not only public's imagination, but also to validate some of the assumptions that we've put forward as a business plan. And those vehicles then allowed us to go out and source the platform technology that would allow us to underpin the styling and the body and the entire product. And upon many different reviews and discussions and assessments with different suppliers, Geely was chosen as the most favorable, but also the most applicable in our case due to the business plan, which really allowed us to buy into their platform technology. Now, where we have the freedom is to establish our own platform dimensions that would suit our portfolio of vehicles. Because currently the plan is to propose 3 different vehicles all on the same platform, which if you've seen what's happened in the past with traditional OEMs trying to share platforms, there is a compromise that has to be made due to the nature of the shared components. Not the proportions sometimes suffer. And where we have the opportunity is that we get to dictate those proportions from the very beginning. Now, the third component of the equation is the styling resources. Now, under our leadership within EMP, our head of design, Tadeusz Jelec, a good friend of mine from Jaguar days as well, and myself, we formed the core of the design team from EMP. However, you cannot design a car, much less 3, with just 2 individuals. And this is really where the expertise of Pininfarina come into play. They're not only our resource extension to our resources, but they also bring in the Pininfarina name. And this is quite an interesting partnership where you look at the technology from Geely, the styling expertise from Pininfarina, and the kind of the know-how and internal know-how from EMP, really create a global partnership, but one that allows us also to look inside the European market and perhaps approach the Izera product from a slightly different perspective, something that being inside the country and not being exposed to the culture and to the consumer tendencies might be quite difficult. So to have an outside perspective is really quite a benefit.
I would imagine. Now, you mentioned 3. My understanding is you'll have an SUV, a hatchback, and a wagon?
Correct.
Oh, yeah, I love wagons. We just don't get any of those, well, very many of those anymore on this side of the water, which is kind of a bummer. Of course, I grew up in the 70s. My parents had a Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser. If you think back to the design studies with the cool windows up above, almost like the VW bus in a way, when you think back to those, the multi-window buses. But I always thought that was cool, but we just don't see many of those anymore. But in Europe, and I love going to Europe because you see so many wagons on the road. But of course, SUVs dominate the market, at least here. So that decision to do those 3, to me, is very interesting. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that because of what the market is demanding?
Well, I think you have to realize that also trying to create a new brand, you have to look at fleet sales and what the fleet sales demand in terms of volume, cargo capacity, and hence the vast array of vehicle offerings from our business strategy.
It's interesting to me, but it makes sense. And you mentioned earlier the idea of multi-platforms. Many brands have tried to do this, and they all end up being a bit compromised. My viewpoint.
That's a good word, yeah.
Yeah, as Absolutely. A consumer, the first one that comes to mind, and I'm a Porsche fanatic, as my listeners know, is the 996, which shared a lot of components with the Boxster, which diminished the 911, maybe brought the Boxster up, but there was the middle ground didn't quite make sense to those those two cars. So, but certainly we've seen it in many other cases, and especially over here in the U.S. with a lot of things, say across GM platforms or even Ford, where you're like, well, wait, is that really a Chevy, or is that a Buick, or is that what is that? So.
And we're starting to see a lot more of that over this side of the pond with some of the partnerships. Obviously, the vehicle platforms are making their way down from America and being rebadged as Alfa Romeos. You do see that the proportions do suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, where will these vehicles be built? Will they be built in Poland?
The vehicles will be built and assembled in our yet-to-be-built Jaworzno factory, which is in the region of the Izerian Mountains, hence the name of the vehicle. Work, as you can imagine, being a new startup with a very aggressive timing plan, a lot of those elements are going in parallel. We're developing the vehicle at the same time that the teams are building the plans for the factories and the land is being prepared.
Wow. Holy cow. Yeah, this is from the dirt up. So this is pretty exciting stuff.
There's no going back. Yeah,
no, you're there.
All cylinders going.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. And I've had guests on the show that have been involved in this ground up factory. They get to be involved in some of the design aspects there and how this whole thing's going to come together. Oh my gosh, this is a lot of moving parts. Is there a date? Well, there must be a date when the first cars are supposed to roll off the assembly line?
Currently, the forecast is for the first vehicles to roll off the assembly line end of 2025.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, we better get going because you got a lot to do, my friend. That's amazing. I can't wait to see what you guys end up with. We'll have to have you back, or maybe your colleague, Tadeusz, is that how his name said?
Tadeusz, yeah.
Tadeusz. Have your colleague Tadeusz back to talk about that when the cars are rolling off the line. I like to talk about what I call our driving inspirations. You've worked around some incredible mentors in your life. You talk about your time at Jaguar Land Rover. Is there somebody in your life that really stands out that was very influential and very helpful?
Absolutely, but for that I would have to probably go back to my art center days. And the beautiful thing about art center, which is quite unique, and it's not actually something that's found in many schools outside of North America, CCS would be probably the other one, is that you have working professionals. And one of the individuals that I really look up to, but also I've been really influenced by, is Marek Djordjevic. Marek was known for his time at Rolls-Royce, developing the Phantom. But during my studies at Art Center, he really was a source of influence from the way that he spoke about design to the way he approached students, the kind of open-mindedness. And even when he would look at portfolios, there was an element that he would kind of just try and guide you down your own path and not try to impose something upon you that maybe he would like. And this was really then reflected in my other mentor, per se. My first manager at Jaguar, Ed Willis, has very much the same mentality. It's allows you to kind of speak up, present your work, gets you out there in front of the head bosses, doesn't hold you back, doesn't take your work, but really allows you to kind of flourish and really present yourself in the best way possible. But also looks at strategy and approaches problems from experience and sees obstacles along the path that we know we will hit later down the road. So those two individuals are really some of the people that I've tried to model myself. And as I mentioned before, design is a partnership. It's not designed by one individual. So having those personal relationships within a team is very important. How you treat people, how you let them flourish, which I only believe makes a stronger team.
Absolutely. Very fun. One of the great things about Art Center, and again, having so many guests on the show who graduated from there and some of the instructors, I can see that in many, many ways. Challenges. Now, let's talk about this. I like for people to share a huge challenge that they faced, either in business or personal, but more importantly, what it taught them, because at the time they're not fun to go through. But when you come out of them, you go, okay, maybe that was a good thing that I had to deal with that. Is there something like that, a time in your life?
Absolutely. This is not one I tell many people, but...
I'm getting a scoop.
No, it's all right. Just upon starting with the Land Rover, I was fresh out of school, eager to join. And I must say it didn't last very long because after a month, my contract was terminated.
Oh no.
But I was given, it was probably the wrong person for the wrong job at the time. However, that did open up opportunities within Land Rover's other department, where I got to be part of a team and kind of lead a team that looked at expanding the Land Rover licensing deals and creating bespoke merchandise products, which kind of tied back to my days of industrial design and doing product design, which then opened up my contacts with Jaguar and allowed me to join over to Jaguar. So even though at the time it was quite difficult to kind of swallow that, and there were a lot of thoughts going through my mind as a young designer whether I can make it in the business, but fundamentally, it's a blessing in disguise. And since then, there were a lot of events that happened along the way, along the journey, which were only enablers to the greater goals to be achieved. So that's really taught me to kind of keep the head up, no matter how bad the situation is. Tomorrow's a new day, and yesterday we can't implement. So
I love it. That's the great example of when one door closes, another opens, but you've got to be willing to look for that door that can open.
Absolutely.
Yeah, versus just walking away with your head down. Wonderful story. I thank you for sharing that. Looking ahead, bucket list accomplishments. I mean, what you guys have planned there is quite bold and fast and really quickly moving. I wanted to kind of twist this question up with you a little bit in the worlds of EVs, because as you said, in your generation, this EV change that's happening is happening really fast. And I just wanted to get your personal impressions of where we're going with this and and I'll rephrase this because I would set you up for failure if I said, do you really like EVs? Because you're obviously working for a company that does it. I'm not going to do that to you. What has you most excited about the opportunities that electric vehicles are going to bring us?
I'm most excited about the opportunities from electric vehicles in the terms of the packaging that allows us. It definitely makes greater use of the space. By trade, my specialty is interior design. And traditionally in the business, it's called interior design for a reason. And that's a lot of effort, a lot of money is either spent on vehicle dynamics and the exterior. And a lot of times, at least has been in my experience, the interiors are kind of a little bit on the second plan. But whereas EVs and fundamentally autonomy will lead us, and I'm not saying I'm excited about this from an enthusiast perspective, but from a product offering, I think it will allow us to put emphasis back on the interiors, put the materials where they need to be, and to really enhance the product experience. One of the discussions we've had during my time at my previous employer was if a brand is very focused on being a driver's choice, what happens in the age of autonomy? What do we do when the driver is no longer part of the equation? And I think there's really will depend on the brands that will have the equity to step outside of the automotive world and to offer services and experiences for the customer, which are still part of the brand, but looking outside of just the automobile. And this is, as I mentioned, with what we're trying to do with Izera. It's not only a product that we're trying to develop, but we're trying to develop a completely new brand. And for that brand to survive in today's age, it needs to look just beyond a singular product, but to offer a complete customer experience.
Well said. I'll tell you an interesting story. I'm into cars, obviously. My wife really hasn't ever been. She kind of tolerates my passion and my craziness. However, when we were looking for her first SUV, she came off of having a Acura Legend. If you remember those vehicles, which I thought were nicely designed cars. And it was a great car. We had it for a long time. We went to look at all the SUV options. And I, in my mind, at first had the first Acura, I think it was the MDX, in my mind, but they were marking those things up over MSRP, and I just can't do that. I'm not going to buy a depreciating asset for more than what you're offering. So we ended up at BMW with the first X5, and this is a great example of the interiors being so important. She slid into that seat, looked around and said, "This is it, buy it, I'm done." I said, you haven't even driven it. She goes, "Look at this interior compared to the Acura." We went to the Dodge Durango, I think it was at the time, Jeeps, whatever they are. She goes, "Oh no, this is where I want to be sitting."
That's it. That's it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it really made a difference. And we still have that vehicle. Well, the second we bought another one, but it's almost 19 years old now. It's held up tremendously. And the inside of that car is still, well, New cars are pretty crazy with all the electronics and, the iPads on the dash and all this, but it's still very comfortable. You get inside, you feel like you're in a really nice car and you feel at home. And she likes the analog world, but I think you're right. And the opportunities that you designers have with these new vehicles with the space is, So do a good job. Okay. Those of us out there need it. We want it. Special vehicle stories. Is there a vehicle in your past that you'd like to share a quick story about?
Well, I think we all kind of hark back to the days when we were little, and going back to my beginnings, obviously child of the 80s, but if you look at communist Poland at the time, vehicles weren't really something that everybody had or everybody could afford. I think my parents waited like 3 or 4 years in queue, as in the ticket sequence, to be able to purchase the first vehicle.
Oh my gosh!
So it was really they weren't quite as abundant as they are now, and much like every other Polish individual you probably speak with, our first vehicle was a Fiat 126, the Polski Fiat. Under license from the Italians, but developed for the Polish market. And I remember my earliest memories driving with my dad, whether it was going to visit his side of the family, or he grew up. His father was a forest ranger, so they grew up kind of in the middle of forest on a government estate, but. To get to there, you had to drive through some forest roads. So my earliest memories, whenever we could drive up with him, was to sit on his lap and I would steer. And I think maybe that was kind of what sparked that passion for automotive, not only automotive design but for the automotive culture. But those are probably some of the earliest memories. And now I have children of my own, and I speak with my son who's 8, and he looks at the cars that I've had and he wants to have that one because that's what dad drove and I want to drive that. So I think a lot of those earliest memories are the ones that we stick with the most.
That car obviously was never over here. However, what comes to mind when you say that? The actor Tom Hanks had one of those and
yes, he did, yeah.
Sold it at an auction. I think it was last year or 2 years ago or something like that. I think his was a 74, 75 or something like that. But I had never really I probably had seen them. You kind of think of the Fiat 500 as another, older style car. But
correct.
That thing's so little, but I thought, why would Tom Hanks have a Fiat 126? Very interesting. But I think it was white, if I remember right. But okay, cool. I love it. Well, let's crawl into your head a little bit. I'm a car psychologist. I hold a special degree from some university that nobody's ever heard of. And I want to crawl into your skull here. If you were reincarnated, manifest as a vehicle, what would you be, but more importantly, why?
That's an easy one. It would be Land Rover Discovery.
Oh, okay.
It's practical. It's dependable. It kind of takes life by the horns and just goes. There's no stopping it. It's very much how I kind of approach it. Maybe it was part of my North American upbringing. I think definitely part of the American attitude, the can-do attitude, is something that I kind of hold true in the way I conduct my profession. But if I was to reincarnate as a car, it very much would be a Land Rover Discovery for those very reasons.
Now, would it be one of the older versions, let's say for like 90s or?
It would be the LR4. So not the recent one, which is quite controversial, but the one before that, still quite boxy. I think the beautiful thing about that car was that it looks good on off-road, but it also looks good at a high-end restaurant. It's wolf in sheep's clothing in that regard.
That brand was interesting to me because when it first came out, quality standards were quite suspect, but everybody wanted one because there was some level of status that came with that car. And I always scratched my head going, where's this coming from? I don't quite get it. And we had friends that had the means. We didn't at the time when I was young, married, but they would buy them. And I'd look and go, okay, it's kind of cool looking, but you look at the quality build back then, very different now, of course, and you go, what? But looking back now, I get it. I mean, it goes all the way back to England and the Queen driving, the Land Rover across the fields to go riding her horse. And I mean, it just has this history to it, I think, and it's worldwide. It's very international.
It is. Yeah. But then also, there's the history with the camel racing.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a really great part of that history to show its capabilities. But I've had a chance to do the Land Rover experience as well. And, what those cars are capable of is quite astounding due to their weight. But the technology on board and the vehicle adaptability is second to none.
They had those at the Quail, which is a wonderful automotive event that takes place
Yes.
during Car
Yep.
Week. And they would drive it up into the hillside, which it didn't even look like there were roads up there. And I went in one, and where we went, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, are we going to roll over? Don't worry.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
are
yeah,
you
yeah.
serious? They've come a long way, baby, as they say. How about a great book that you'd like to share with us? We love books here at Cars Yeah.
I think it's more from a creative side rather than the
That's good.
automotive
Okay.
passion side, but it will be the Word of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that one. I'm sure a lot of creatives are.
Yeah.
It's touches on something that I think we all face, whether we're creatives or just in our own professions. It's that internal voice of resistance, and something I definitely struggle with quite often, probably more so than not. But I find myself reading that book quite often, trying to kind of instill, the idea to disassociate myself, the identity of the resistance from itself. So it's a really good read for individuals who kind of look at that voice inside telling them they can't do it. But all they have to realize is that voice is not you. It's the resistance, and to acknowledge it, to pay it respect, but also to recognize that it does not control you.
Yes, a great book. My father, who was a architect and an artist, designer, gave me a copy of that book. So, yeah. It's a great book. Awesome. So before I let you go today, we're going to enable you to go on the ultimate drive. So I'm going to park any car in the world in your driveway. You can take it anywhere, and you can take anybody with you, including somebody from the past who's no longer with us, which makes an interesting riding companion. So what does the ultimate drive look like for you?
It's probably a little bit different than the previous guests,
Okay.
but the ultimate drive would have to be with my dad. It's we don't share our passion for automotive world as much, but he has been a great influence on me as far as just going out in nature. He's an avid hunter, but I think that the ideal car that we would take there is an Earth Roamer Overlander.
Oh.
A company built. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with them, but
yeah.
they're based in Colorado. Very luxurious off-roading experience. But I think the idea there is that the vehicle as a means to kind of go down the unpaved road, to go away from our everyday life and kind of get off the grid. And as we've discussed earlier, kind of disconnect from the social media, from the news, from everything, and just be out there in the wilderness. And you can literally change your scenery at the press of a button. So that would be a ride I would love to take.
Yeah, man. Talk about, an escape vehicle. That thing's, it's just, it's the camper on steroids, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they can go anywhere. So very cool. Sounds like a wonderful journey you'd have with your father. Well, you've taken us on a marvelous journey today, and I can't thank you enough for sharing this new vehicle that your team is coming out with. Before I let you go, could you share maybe some words of inspiration, a wisdom, or a success quote of some kind?
Absolutely. I think for anyone who's interested in the field of automotive design or just would like to know more, I think the idea there that it's really automotive design is something that's done by a team of not only artists, but very professionals, people with a great passion for what they do. And something that people don't realize that all the vehicles out there have also, they're done traditionally in automotive clay. And so there's this great balance of artistry and engineering and technical know-how. But it's very much a partnership, and it's not done by one individual, but a consortium of experts.
Absolutely. Definitely. Just like most great things in the world. How can people learn more about Izera and electromobility?
Individuals looking to further learn about our brand can visit us through all the major social media sources as Instagram, LinkedIn, but also through our website at electromobilitypoland.pl.
Absolutely. I'll put links to all those on Mario's website. Well, not his website, although now he's got a place on my website, on the Car Show website. I'll put links to all those so that you can check this out, learn what they're creating, and then maybe we have you or one of your teammates back in a couple of years to talk about the final product as it rolls off. And I want to do a shout out thank you to your colleague Pavel, who has put us together today. Thank you very much for bringing one of your teammates to the team. This has been really enlightening, invigorating, and exciting. This is amazing. From the ground up, out of the dirt, comes a new brand for everybody. Oh, you know what? I should have asked you. Will the cars ever be available here in the U.S.?
Definitely, it would be an opportunity. However, right now, at this moment in time, the vehicles and the business plan is centered around the mainland Europe.
You guys get all the cool stuff. What's the deal?
Well, I think if you, The American market is a very specific one, not only for that, but also the safety regulations do mean that the homologation process is quite more intensive if you are doing vehicles on a global scale.
I understand. Well, just have to get back over to Europe to have some fun. Mariusz, thank you
Absolutely.
for being so generous today with your time and expertise and sharing this wonderful new vehicle you're bringing to the world. Until you and I talk again, my friend, I'll see you, hopefully, down the road.
Mark, the pleasure's been all mine. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.